Why, hello, comic book publisher. I heard you want a new comic that will win you plenty of awards, recognition, and fame across the industry. Why, I'm the writer slash artist slash butt boy you're looking for. You see, I'm down with the kids. And I'm here to tell you of my ultimate story. This comic will change things forever and ever. It will be greater than Watchmen. In fact, it will do so much for the comic book industry, I will have to win an Oscar for it. I get the movie rights, right? Right? Okay. But anyway, let me tell you about my proposal for this new comic that no one has ever done. What if Superman was evil? Let's get to the truth of the matter, and let me actually be able to see for once in my life. Hey, that proposal you hear is a lot of independent superhero comics and a lot of other things. Let's get to this. So, how did this video come about, you might be asking? Well, I saw the trailer for Brightburn. Let's talk about Evil Supermen and its history. Ding. Alright, let's get into it. Superman. The big blue Boy Scout. The superhero everyone knows about, unless it's Batman. A superhero who... Actually, there's a lot of versions of him. In fact, if you look up like different versions of Superman from other companies, you could probably fill out this entire video with just pictures of them. In fact, I hope my editor is doing that right now, but he might be lazy. I will accept it either way. But Superman has a longevity. He was the first superhero, really. And while there are pre-examples, like the Phantom and some other characters, Superman really codified and made a lot of superheroes. In fact, a lot of the superheroes we're reading today would not exist without him. Hey, Batman fans, you hear that? Without Superman, you wouldn't have Batman. Well, also talk to Shadow fans. They need some apologies from you. But okay, Superman. Why does Brightburn really rake my coals? It's an Evil Superman story, and I've seen a lot of Evil Superman stories. Going back years, and this is even not too uncommon back when Superman was really the most popular superhero around. You see, Superman is often deconstructed for one reason. He's the pure superhero. If we take him down, we can show that no ideal can't go untarnished. It's basically, if you do an Evil Superman story, I find it to be like your teenage edgelord fanfic about Sonic the Hedgehog. And I'm not joking about that. But it wasn't always like that, and I'll tell you why we're kind of here. Brightburn, to me, is kind of just boring. It's about a kid who has Superman's powers. Oh no, a kid with powers of Superman would be evil, maybe. Who knows? We can't really judge. He's a kid. Superman has been through a lot of permutations across all the different companies as a character archetype. In fact, Superman as a character archetype is now often called the Cape.
Stratogale, April 23rd, 57. Cape caught in a jet turbine.
You can't generalize about this.
Meta-Man, express elevator. Dyna-Guy, snag on takeoff. Splashdown, sucked into a vortex. Nook it!
Batman's style are often called the Cowl.
Fuck Batman.
That's how much of Superman permutations there are around. But let's talk about Superman permutations and how we got Brightburn as a movie. So, the first thing to understand is that a lot of people find Superman boring. A lot of people do. In fact, it's often like the first argument you hear about when people try to argue about Superman. Well, Superman is boring. He's invulnerable. He doesn't have to be challenged by anything. Well, first of all, have you actually read a Superman story is the first thing I'm asking. Then, if you read all of them, then fine, make that criticism. you clearly have a very well-developed opinion. But, to be fair, Superman has kind of become a symbol of the comic book industry in America as a whole. He's been around, he's represented the corporations, and a lot of people try to subvert that in very different ways. And that's what I kind of mean. There's a lot of evil versions of Superman. And here's the thing, it really started since the beginning of the characters. The first kind of take on Superman was probably Mad Magazine, at least the first real well-known version of it, which was called Super Duper Man. It was a parody where basically he was like this skinny, nerdy guy called Clark Kent. If you ever wonder where that joke came from, well, here it is. And throughout the different decades, there have been permutations of this kind of dark, evil interpretation, fuck-up interpretation of Superman. The list goes on. But as a reader, I find I'm so bored by it, I just want it to stop.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more! Where the fuck are your parents? Who are your parents?
Mostly because it's boring. Oftentimes, when anybody tries to create a pastiche superhero world, they'll have a Superman character, and oftentimes he's the biggest villain in the story. And it basically means that if I'm seeing that, I know who the main villain of your story is. And I'm gonna find that boring. Or I'm just gonna find how you interpret boring. Because one of the things about Superman that writers tend not to realize is that he does actually have limits. He is fought by people more powerful than him. Darkseid is sometimes a literal idea than an actual physical threat. And that's not even just Darkseid. There's actually other people who gave Superman a challenge. And in fact, a lot of his villains are mental because they're like, oh, we can't take Superman on physically, so we'll challenge him mentally. Like, his biggest villain is literally the smartest person on Earth. Well, let's not get into who's the smartest person on DCU, but that's the point. Superman's challenged, just not in a physical way. But why am I bored with it? Because here's the thing. The Brightburn trailer kind of goes through the same motions. And if you know these motions, then, well, I'm going to talk about a lot of different comics here. So we have this kid. Oh, look, we have this kid who's an alien, and oh, because he's an alien, he's not really human, so he doesn't have emotions like a human. So he's clearly a sociopath. Alright. Oh no, his mom is actually fucked up in some way and raises him with this idea that he's special. Oh my god. And the dad is just scared. Believe it or not, this is actually a plot of several different comics. Here's two right now. Max Immortal by Rick Veitch, which is really good, but really fucked up. At one point, we have a Superman midget beheading people. I can't believe I said Superman midget beheading people. What is my life? Now, the other one is Irredeemable by Mark Waid. Now, I know Mark Waid has some controversy. I'm not going to bring it up here. But it was a really good comic, and yeah, that was actually one of the main plots of the comic. Oh, the kid has no real weakness, so he's just unstoppable. What can we do? I kind of hate this as a story thing. It's just that there's only ever one. Usually, there's always something else out in the world. Like, if you're establishing a world where superpowers can actually exist, guess what? There's probably a lot of other shit in the world going on that we don't know about if superpowers can actually exist. I know it sounds weird, but even in, like, stuff that's horror-based, you got Nightmare on Elm Street, they had psychic kids who could battle Freddy, so clearly something else was going on. I'm just saying. But my point is that as an archetype, it's really played out. I'm going to actually list a bunch of stuff. Watchmen, Squadron Supreme, Spawn, the Rob Liefeld Supreme. Yes, I did mention Spawn. They also have like an evil take on Superman there at some point. Yeah, I know. I was shocked by that too. Oh, let's not forget the Majestic from Wildstorm. Oh, look, we also have a Superman that kills, who's not such a bad guy, in Apollo from The Authority. Oh, man, I could probably do this. Oh, we also have Gladiator from the X-Men line of comics. He's part of the Shi'ar Royal Guard. He has a mohawk. That's what makes it different. Oh, and he also has an upside-down triangle-esque thing going on. Let's see who else we got here. Look, let me tell you this. It kind of is insane. Now, not a lot of people read Milestone Comics. Milestone was by a lot of great creators. Dwayne McDuffie, and they created Static Shock. The last canon Static Shock miniseries, Rule of the Cool, actually finished with them fighting an evil Superman 2. It's a little insane, but it gets on my nerves. Hyperion from Marvel Comics has often been used as an evil Superman in stories. There's a story where he takes over the Earth and kills all the superheroes on that Earth. Actually has a great ending where they get a good version of Hyperion to fight this evil version of Hyperion. I know, comics. Ha! But, yeah, no, I'm just bored and sick of it. Because, let me put it this way. Right now, Superman is a symbol of comic culture. He's not really the symbol people want him to be anymore of the current comic book scene. And that's really sad. But he's been so subverted by a lot of creators. Let's talk about Miracle Man. While people bring up the fact that it's also Captain Marvel based, a lot of it is based on the idea of like a guy who's like Superman taking over the world too. And it's also one of the most widely read comics. Dark Knight Returns had Batman fighting Superman because he became a corrupt pawn of the government. Superman has literally been used to subvert so much shit as a character and his symbol that anytime I see an evil version, I just think you're pretty much just you're just using the same story cliches handed to you by better writers. Heck, if you want to get a canon version of DC, look at the Injustice Verse version of Superman. Or the Justice Lord's version of Superman from Justice League Unlimited. There's a lot of evil Supermen we're dealing with here. And that's I'm just kind of done just seeing this archetype being used as, oh, he's the most powerful. So guess what? He's the ultimate bad guy. Who knew? Oh, look at the fall of humanity. Look at how we're actually flawed and we can't live up to ideals. God, kill me. Get your fanfic writing Sonic OC shit out of here. A lot of writers who used to use this trope were using it in a kind of a smart way and were very relevant to the time. But right now, comics as a whole, if you want to be relevant, choose someone else. Superman is a symbol of comics, and I think he's one of the most important symbols. But at this point, I think there are bigger sacred cows you can start desecrating the corpse of. Okay, I'm being a little vulgar here, but it's so overused, I just want to, die. But dying I can't really do. So I'm just going to talk. My thing here comes down to this. If you're going to do this as a story, and if you're a writer or an artist, start thinking outside the box with this. Who are the big symbols of comics nowadays that you can mess with? Well, let's go over them. Who's relevant now that you can actually do stuff with in comics? Well, let's have some fun. Let's start with a really major sacred cow for a lot of people. Sandman by Neil Gaiman. I love Sandman by Neil Gaiman. Insert a picture of Sandman there, hopefully. But I love Sandman. It's one of my favorite comics of all time. It's one of the most critically acclaimed comics. Someone please do a piss take on it. Talk about how maybe Neil Gaiman has issues that... Like, somebody, talk about how you have this weird dream guy who's like, oh, I'm so sensitive about my emotions. Oh, I'm such a bastard. Like, do something.
Isn't it obvious? I'm the Sandman.
I guess Sandman's not nearly iconic enough somehow. Okay, who else is a big popular character? Deadpool! Why not do an evil, fucked up version of Deadpool that isn't dumb like Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe? I believe in you, writer! Come on, give me something. Let's see who else. Actually, how about the recent Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers? Maybe an evil version of her would be interesting. But then again, both sides in that argument are kind of dumb. I'm not going to touch that anymore. Time to poke the other bears. Let's get at. What other sacred cows can we desecrate today? Maybe Spawn. Spawn is, symbol of the indie comic scene to an extent. How about Cerebus for, old school indie comic symbolism? Skew that. Look at how fucked up some of the shit that happened with Cerebus was. Again, there's a lot more you can mine from comics than just the traditional symbols like Superman. There's a lot of effed up stuff in the history of comics that could be talked about that are important symbols that need maybe re-examining. Superman has been re-examined so often that current writers who like Superman often have to defend themselves. And the best, most critically acclaimed Superman stories don't tend to be the dark ones. They tend to be lighthearted because it's different than all the mire of evil Superman we get. So oh heck, wasn't there a movie that wasn't popular because it was a dark take on Superman? I wonder what movie that was that had him destroying cities. I wonder which one. But that's kind of the thing. Comic books have a lot of symbols. And if you really want to destroy a symbol of current comics in a way that might be interesting, that might need some deconstruction, that might need some looking at, that isn't just, oh, he's the greatest. Maybe Batman would be the best one. He's one of the most popular characters. Heck, there are some comics that probably our symbols just need some re-examination here. Like, heck, I've never seen anybody do a piss take on Love and Rockets. One of the biggest indie comic books of all time, but who knows? Maybe there's a piss take there. Maybe it's time to look at some scenes. Now, people might be going like, but David, not a lot of people know about these comics. And I'm like, yeah, maybe not a lot of people do. But one of the things that Medium has to do as something to grow is that we have to look at our symbols and what we consider popular the most and go just beyond the ones we know and sometimes look and deconstruct them. There are other things to look at in comics besides deconstructing superhero. Look, the superhero has been deconstructed. There's its rotting corpse over there. The cool new cyborg reconstruction's kind of awesome. You really can't mine much from him anymore. Just accept that. You can probably do some interesting superhero stories still even today. Heck, I read one recently. But there are other things to do in comics that isn't just taking apart Superman. We have so many genres that could use a good lashing. If I'm gonna be honest, if I'm gonna read a comic, I wouldn't mind an entire comic about how fucked up that the indie scene is almost ruled by autobiographical comics. While some of those are good, it's like this. Oh, I'm reading about your sad, fucky life while you're not creative enough to come up with something interesting for me to read other than your life. Now, I'm sorry I'm being mean here. I'm a critic. It's my job to be mean. Sometimes. Sometimes I need to make you cry. But the thing is, symbols in comics, Superman is overdone. And the fact that we're now getting the movie version of this overdone concept just is not my thing. I'm done. I've already read this story. He's either going to be killed by, I don't know, kryptonite somehow exists in the world. He gets away with it. He grows, I don't know. Like, the only way I can see this story growing on me is this. He feels guilty about what he done as a kid and decides to try and redeem himself. Imagine, this guy who mass murdered an entire town because he was a kid with superpowers feels guilty about it. And then has to live with the idea that he's trying to fix things in some fucked up fashion. That actually sounds like an interesting story to take that place. Other than, I'm invulnerable and I can fuck people up. Oh, God. Because guess what? That's just a horror movie. That's Jason. That's Freddy Krueger. We already have superpowered villains horror movies. Those exist. It's not interesting to do it with Superman, in my opinion, just because he's the symbol. Everybody's done it. Give me something new.